15 in Queensland on a Thursday morning, and it's a beautiful day because I have Melissa Marsden with me. Hi, Mel. Thank you for coming.
Hey, Ivanka. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, you are most welcome. Like I was just saying before we started going live, it's just really cool to hang out with people that you meet often, mostly online, and really sort of have 30 minutes to dive deeper into your journey as an entrepreneur. So
Mm.
before you introduce yourself, I have taken some liberties and took some stuff
Ooh.
from your LinkedIn intro. On LinkedIn, so your official professional introduction is that you are a leading expert in workplace dynamics strategy, and you have over 20 years experience working at the intersection of science, technology, design, and optimization, which I absolutely love. You are very good at redefining work environments to support effective, efficient, and engaged teams who are at the heart of a high performance business. So that is a wonderful introduction. I love that. There are so many questions that popped up when I read through that. But how do you introduce yourself when you're not doing your official LinkedIn spiel?
So I'm a workplace dynamic strategist, which means that I work with organizations to help them understand how their strategic goals, the vision, the values for the organization and their people all come together in their workplace environments, and how we can then leverage our physical environments to enable those strategic goals. So what many organizations don't realize is that their physical environment is really influencing the behavior of their people. So I can walk into an organization and I can see rows and rows of cubicles, and people think, well, why are my people uninspired and why are they not performing?
Well, that's
And
why.
I can kind of tell you pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Whereas when we understand a business and we understand who needs to talk to who, the roles and the tasks that people perform, the type of objectives that we're trying to achieve, the individual values of the organization, what the behaviors are that underpin that, we can then start to influence the way that people show up to work, the way that they engage, communicate, the way that information flows, and the way that they behave ultimately, to reinforce some of those values and therefore the performance of the business in a way that's aligned with where the business wants to be heading as
Yeah.
in the future direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I do.
Cool. Yeah, because I mean, your work environment is so important, isn't it? Like sometimes you walk into offices and you just go like, you just want to get
Yeah.
out of here.
Yeah.
And other offices, you just want to move in, and you just have this creative
Mm.
energy and this buzz, and it's just so important to see the differences and to understand what it does to you as a person.
Yeah. And that's a lot about the feeling that you get when you walk into a place. And that comes down to, again, being really clear about the impression, the brand
Mm,
experience that you want people to have when they come in. And that can either be very attracting or it can be polarizing. And
mm,
that's actually a good thing too, because what you're doing is then you're actually attracting the right people into your organization. So as Simon Sinek says, we want to attract those who believe what we believe
mm.
and are committed to delivering on our why and our purpose in the world. And so your workplace environment is that physical representation. It's kind of like that first impression when you
Yeah,
walk in and you get that feeling, you go, actually, I belong here. I feel like this is my place, or hell no, this is not for me and I'm
yeah,
out.
yeah.
And so it can actually be a really strong recruitment, attraction and retention strategy as well.
Cool. Now, I'm sure that the 11-year-old Melissa didn't
Mm.
say, like, when I grow up, I want to be a workplace strategist.
No, she did not.
So, how did you go and start your business and becoming the person that you are today?
I've always been interested in design and construction and building things. So I grew up on a farm in Western Queensland. My dad's a bit of a jack of all trades. I learned how to weld. I did all of the things and I was the only girl in my tech studies class in high school, and as welding, building things, all that sort of stuff. So I've always had that creative ability. I was very interested in art and drawing and things as well, but I was also very entrepreneurial from a very young age. So I was, we used to come to Brisbane to go to the dentist, and I would make things and sell it to the dental assistants. I would bag horse manure and sell that. So anywhere I could make a buck, I was doing it. And, trying to create these little business schemes out of the whole thing as well. So I was always interested in doing that. I initially wanted to be a graphic designer, and I got to university and I did a 3-strand baseline year. So with Griffith Bachelor of Design Studies, you do industrial design, graphic design, and interior design. And I got to the end of my first year and I thought, if I design logos for the rest of my life, I will shoot myself. So I went, this interior design thing looks pretty good. And I'd actually done work experience. When I did work experience in year 10 at school, I said I wanted to do interior design. So they sent me off to the curtains department at Maya, which was not my idea, which I think is why I went back to graphics, but kind of it righted my course at the end of my first year. And I ended up going down the interior design path and I absolutely loved it. But that entrepreneurial thing kind of started to creep back in, and I ended up focusing purely on workplace design, which was very much business orientated. And so I took that and I was able to then sort of unpack and learn how businesses ticked. I really was interested in how businesses operated, what made a successful business, what made an unsuccessful business, what made a business that people actually wanted to work for. And so through the course of my design work, I was able to then implement these ways of thinking and testing, and sort of it bordered on organizational psychology and behavioral science, I realized later. But it was taking those elements and then understanding them and then applying them to the way that the design of the space was created. So that's that's how it ended up. And that's how I ended up running my own business.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because look, when we go to business school, or when we go to seminars or events or learn about how to run your business, it's all about the systems and the processes, and it's all about looking after your books and the finances, and look after your people, but then from a like a bonus structure or salary, or culture is important, but nobody ever talks about the organizational environment. And how has that changed? How has your work changed now that there's a really big push into continuing to work from home and have hybrid workspaces?
It's really interesting because the work that I was doing pre-pandemic was very much exactly the work that I'm doing now. The only difference is pre-pandemic, I was beating down doors trying to get people to understand the impact of their workplace environment, because previously organizations were purely about, we need office space because we've got X amount of people, we've got to put X amount of bums on seats. So that's the metric we're working with. No one ever looked beyond that. Or very few, the enlightened few did. But what's happened is we've just seen this real acceleration around what the future of work looks like and how important our environment has become in terms of solidifying and supporting culture and engagement and the way that we communicate and we interact. And I think it took the pandemic to take all of those things away from us, to actually identify, well, what is the real purpose of our workplace? Why is it that we actually make the effort to commute from our home to this other place to work when we can work at home? Yeah. So what has happened is, there's been a silver lining from our perspective, is that I've now got organizations who are approaching us going, we've seen what you've been doing. We now understand. Can you come and help us do this? Yeah. And what we're seeing is that the shift is not necessarily that organizations are going, we need to get rid of our offices, or there's the other flip side of people mandating everybody has to come back. And there's twofold to that. So the ones that are sort of a bit more in the middle are going, well, we understand that people can work from anywhere, but we also understand that we want to build social capital. We still want to be fostering this idea of a community within our workplaces. How can our environment actually attract our people back into the business? So we go through a process of taking all those elements and understanding and going, well, why do we want people in here? What do we want them to do when they're actually in the office? Yeah. And that's changed the conversation, because a lot of what I'm doing now is workflow mapping and process mapping. So helping organizations understand which teams and departments need to be on the building on what days, doing what activities, so that they're getting that cross-collaboration, that cross-fertilization, they're building that social capital, and it's supporting the individual and it's supporting the organization. So that's a lot of what we're doing. But what that means is, if I'm going into the office, I'm not going there to sit at my desk and work. I'm going in there to collaborate, to communicate, to connect. So the space that I'm creating for those organizations is not rows and rows of desks. It's lots of different types of meeting spaces, different tech-enabled systems, large cafes and spaces for people to be able to just to bond and build those relationships. So that's a lot of what we're doing. And that's how we've really seen that shift. So it's then supporting organizations and individuals to understand, well, how do I then set up something similar at home, and how do I maintain that experience across in person and remote work as
Yeah.
well. So, yeah.
So a lot of my work is all around creating clarity around risk, whether it's cybersecurity risk or HR risk or workplace health and safety risk. So it's all around what are the compliances and the legal requirements that you have to adhere to. So how has that changed in your part of the world? How has the focus on compliance and risk management guided you through the past few years?
It's been an interesting sort of situation. I think there's still a lot of ambiguity about what is hygienic and safe and what are the expectations of the organization. From our perspective, we're starting to implement, how we can educate people to be more hygienic, how they can deal with sanitation within the workplaces. And there's a lot of conjecture too, because obviously when we are not working in the office all day, every day, the idea of owning our own desk and this concept of the word that I hate, hot desking, because it's not really what we're doing, but sharing desks obviously brings up hygiene factors. So what are we doing to be able to support that? And so if you're an existing fit out, it's about providing the right sanitation structures, the right training, the right guidance, the right cleaning protocols, those sorts of things coming in. But if we're designing completely new space, we start to look at automation of doors, automation of tapware, sort of gesture sensitive equipment. So, no touch toilets and no touch tapware. All of those sorts of things are starting to come in from that perspective. But I think a lot of organizations are dealing with the risk of people working at home. And that sits in a different bucket, though. That's where we get ergonomists and other people involved to be able to advise on what is a safe work practice so that people are at lesser risk of injury.
Yeah, makes sense. So just a slight change, because one of the other things you mentioned earlier is that you grew up on a farm, and it's really interesting because you are the second female entrepreneur that I'm talking to that comes from a farm. And one of my most favorite employees ever was from a lychee farm in Mackay. I have an agricultural background as well. And to me, and that maybe that's my prejudice, is that growing up on a farm really teaches you to work and really teaches you the value of community and teamwork, and the fact that there are external factors that have impact on what's happening. What's your perception of that? How has growing up on a farm helped you become the businesswoman that you are now?
I 100% agree with you on that. I think you learned the value of hard work from a very young age. The idea of, everyone had a job to do. We all had a chore that needed to be completed because you had responsibilities. You had things that you needed to take care of. And I think that's sort of just been very instilled in us from a very young age. And I actually think about it, and it was a couple of years ago that I had this sort of aha moment and went, oh, that's actually why it is the way it is. I look at workplaces and those sorts of environments as these are environments I can control. I can shape them to influence people the way that is in a positive nature. Whereas when you grow up on a farm, you are completely at the mercy of Mother Nature. It's everything in your environment is out of your control. So drought, fire, flood, all of those things you are affected by, and it affects your livelihood. And so I think you become very conscious of what is in your control and what is outside of your control. And I think that's possibly why I've ended up in the space that I am, because I can control the environment that I'm in, whereas previously that was outside of my control.
Yeah.
But I think, that value of hard work is very much instilled in you from a very young age, because, if you don't work, you die.
Yeah, exactly. Like, pretty good incentive. And hard work you've done and successful work you've done. You've probably one of the most accoladed business women that I know of. You have been multiple finalists or multiple time a finalist in the Telstra Business Awards. You have won so many awards for the work that you've done. The other thing that I think I found is that one of the very first awards that you got is that you were crowned junior fundraiser at the Oakey Rodeo.
Oh my God, how did you find that? I have to thank my mother and my grandmother for that one. Yes,
That was $4,500 in 1993. That's a lot of money.
God. Yes, I was 12 years old. Yeah, my mum put me into I think it was the St. Vincent's Rodeo Princess. And I had to fundraise. Yes, I did. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well, you're still fundraising because on your LinkedIn profile it says your volunteering work. You still do fundraising events. So that's that was instilled very early in the case as well. So you are a born entrepreneur.
God, how did you find that?
Oh, the power of the interwebs.
Wow, well done.
Yeah, so I'm just saying this to establish that you are a true powerhouse entrepreneurial person. You also started a second or third business. You have your main business Community, but then you started a separate business a couple of years ago as well. How did you manage to do that? And I'm not even talking about the fact that you're raising a family of 4 kids and you're pregnant. So how do you manage to compartmentalize and separate the work you do for community, the work you do in your volunteering roles, and your startup? How does that work?
So the volunteering work is a bit more sporadic. So it's kind of a bit more situational and, event based. So it kind of comes and goes. At the moment, I'm not doing any of that because there's so much else going on. But yes, a couple of years ago, I set up Melissa Marsden as an independent brand. And the reason that I did that was twofold. There was a lot of other things that I wanted to explore as an individual in terms of what I wanted to do with my own personal career. So Melissa Marsden is a bit more of a do-it-yourself version. So through the pandemic, what a lot of organizations were doing was they're looking for a lot more information. They weren't ready to make any large commitments. So it was kind of a bit of an outcome of necessity at the same time, because being a workplace designer when everyone was at home, there wasn't a lot of calling for us. So we went through a bit of a dip in our business at that point in time because there was just a riding of the ship and everyone was kind of being very cautious and not investing in that space. So we thought we'd take that opportunity and actually really launch the melissamarsden.com.au brand. And what that enabled us to do was to start productizing the services that we offer in the sort of the done for you version in Community in a do-it-yourself version within the brand. And so that's kind of where it started. What it also enabled me to do is that I had become very intrinsically linked to Community. And so when people came to Community, their expectation was that they would be working with me. And as you know, as a business owner trying to grow a business, there's only so many things that you can actually put your fingers on and that you can be involved in, and that there are other people that you need to employ and to empower them to be able to support the growth of a business. So this was a way to kind of then separate what Mel does and what Community does. So that's pretty much how it all sort of started. And then it's evolved over time. So we've built out the Live a Life by Design program, which is a 6-week experience to help people really get clarity on their own personal self-leadership, because in my own journey, I've know that, you cannot lead a team unless you are able to lead yourself. And so being able to really understand who you are, what your goals are, what your own personal vision is, and then how that translates to confidence and being able to be very purposeful about the actions and the decisions that you make. So I've created that program. And then I do business consulting and coaching as well. I support other organizations in developing their strategic plans and the strategic directions for their organizations. And so in terms of how these two things actually come together, they're very intertwined, because part of it has come out of just productizing what we already do in Community, but other parts of it is how I've structured the growth of our own business and how I've enabled that, but utilizing the skills that I've gathered over years as a workplace designer to enable organizations to kind of fuse all these things together. So they actually go quite hand in hand. And it took a little while to kind of work out what that sort of product ascension model looked like as well, because I didn't want to be having to run 2 separate businesses. That's a lot of effort when you're a small business. So they had to kind of feed into one another, but at different points and different stages. So that's how I kind of, rationalized it all.
Yeah. So if you, because you do a lot of business coaches as well. So if you
Mm.
talk to other business owners and they say, "Oh, I think I want to split up things. I want to productize." Like, what's your biggest tip? What's your advice that you give them?
Be very clear and be very intentional. Some of the mistakes that I've probably made is not validating whether or not people actually want the product that I've
Mm,
created. Having said that, though, even though people may not be buying that particular product, what it has done is given me clarity around the way that we deliver that service. It's created assets that now have simplified the delivery of that
mm,
service. It's also enabled us to get other people to understand the service better because you can articulate it much more clearly. And so it actually has a lot of benefit. So sitting down sometimes and productizing your services can actually have some really
mm.
significant business outcomes for your main your core business,
Yeah.
even though when you had this objective of trying to turn it into something that was this light touch, low value, high volume kind of product, the reality is it's significantly enhancing your core product.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really that being super clear on what it is that you do, who you do it for,
Mhm.
why you do it, and what the benefits are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you set up your business? I'm talking the structure of your business now to be able to step out to to work on your productization, to work on your business coaching, to work on growing a new human. Because I'm assuming that
Yes.
that's going to take a bit of time as well. So,
It does. Look, it's all been a bit of an evolution, to be honest. And as I said, through the pandemic, it was kind of like, well, there's plenty of time to do that sort of stuff
mm,
because there wasn't a lot of demand for us in other capabilities. So we used that time efficiently. And I'm really grateful that we did because we were able to build a lot of that into it now. I run two websites with two completely different platforms. Using the melissamarsden.com, we actually run through Kajabi, which if anyone is looking to sort of run an online business, I can highly recommend because it has everything in the back end. It covers your CRM, your email marketing system, your website, all your products, your learning management system. Everything is built into one platform. So it actually makes it very easy to
I'm doing it.
Oh, thank you. It makes it very easy to productize and automate the business. So a lot of it happens in that. So, you can go through, you can check out a landing page, you can buy from a cart. It will then send you through to, automated email sequences. Everything is already set up in there. So it's actually a fabulous tool to simplify and create space in that. But what it's been about too, and this is something I talk about and I teach in the Live a Life by Design program, it's about understanding and setting up your ideal week. So how can you actually plan and allocate blocks of time to particular tasks and things?
Mm,
Because I know in the past I've switched between tasks and being a small business owner. You go from being very strategic to being very detail orientated,
mm.
facing accounts to, doing all of the things. But time blocking to ensure that your headspace is consistent at points in time. So almost splitting your day into three. And we talk about, time blocking in blocks of 90-minute blocks because that's kind of the best way to kind of break up your day. Doesn't always run perfectly to plan, but having the
At least you have a
intentionality.
plan. Yeah.
Yeah, having the intentionality about it. So there are set days that I work from home and I have set activities that I do on those particular days. I have set days for my coaching and those types of activities. So I know what mindset I need to be bringing to each of those points. And that's kind of how I've planned it out and tried to manage it as best as I can. And in terms of how that kind of then runs with the little human coming along, it's about the thing that I've realized, and particularly this year, my word going into this year was spacious. And to me, that was about creating more expansiveness, more room in my daily life. So not feeling like I'm constantly being under pressure. I'm not being pushed to make decisions in a quick way. I think for much of my life, I've lived in this very much this busy go, 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 got to get more done, got to achieve more, got to.
Yeah.
And I've hit this point where I went, actually, I don't need to prove this to anybody anymore. Success doesn't look like that anymore for me. This is what I want. And so I've made a number of conscious decisions over the last few months to prepare for my baby, which is coming in about 4.5 weeks. So It's not far away now. But, that's even through with staff leaving the business, choosing not to replace them, but then choosing not to take on any additional work or being very selective about the work that we're taking on. It's given me an opportunity to revisit what I want from the business. And then, so therefore, well, what type of work do we want to be doing? What kind of clients do we want to be working with? And being a bit pickier about that. And that just enables us then to be really putting our effort into projects that light us up, we enjoy working on, and energize us rather than depleting us. And I'm a really big believer in that, because you can be as busy as all hell, but if you're working on things that absolutely light your fire, they are not going to be draining to you. But you could be in a soul destroying job working your ass off, and you're smashed because you're still working the same amount of hours, but it's in work that doesn't fulfill you and it doesn't energize you. So I think that's a really important point for people to understand. And it's part of what I do in the coaching, is trying to help people understand what's topping up your battery pack and what's sucking it dry. And, we all have to do the things that suck it dry, but how do we then, refill that up and fill our tank up to make sure that we've got that really healthy balance in there. So that's kind of the ways that I've done that. So we've just sort of making space. So my plan is that I'll have a couple of weeks off in a baby bubble, and then I'll return to work under just sort of essential as required needs only. And then we'll start to look at, well, what does that look like as we go forward? But second time I've done this with the baby, so it's
not your first rodeo.
Not my first rodeo. But very fortunate being the owner of my own business. Wherever I go, baby goes. So if I have a meeting to go to, the baby comes to the meeting with me. And again, picking the clients that you want to work with, my clients love that. They all get baby cuddles while we have meetings. So you just kind of make it work.
And it's interesting because what you said earlier with packaging up the products of your business to run that into a separate brand gave you clarity on what was important and why you do the things you do. It almost sounds like with the pregnancy, it lifted that clarity even more, because you have different time priorities because of the baby, because of the family. And that creates clarity on what you want to get out of your business. So it's almost like you're reiterating what you've done 2 years ago with setting up the Melissa Marsden brand. Now setting up the Melissa Marsden Mini-Me brand. and that. So reason why I'm saying that is that a lot of people are afraid of, I find that they're scared to expand out of what they're currently doing, or to do something different, or to grow a family, or not quite sure how to run work and life together. But it may even be a really good thing, because it will lift your work, it will lift your corporate career or your entrepreneurial career.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I was probably one of those people previously, not so much the family side of things. I looked to role models like Emma Isaacs at Business Chicks. She's got 6 kids and she's running a global empire. And I went to the first conference in Uluru, and she was there with, I think it was her 4th kid at the time. And I just went, well, look, she's doing this. She's got a nanny. She's running this business. Wherever she goes, the baby goes. And I went, well, why can't I do that? So I think it's really important that we have those role models that we can look up to, and we've got people that we can see doing it and going, that whole concept of we can't be who we can't see. And I also had clients. So Nadia Taylor from Mappian was one of my clients, and I worked with them to help them create a family-friendly work environment that enabled her to return to work with her child. So I had many conversations with these people around me that I could go, oh, well, I can see it, so therefore it's possible.
Yeah.
And, whilst they're in much larger organizations, and my experience was quite different to theirs, I had the ability to put that into place and go, well, here's some ways that I could possibly make that work, and here's some scenarios that I can use to support that. So I think that was one way of doing it. from a family perspective, but from that business perspective and that diversification, I think I was probably very scared to do it too pre-COVID, but I feel like COVID gave us so much more permission to trial and test and experiment with things that weren't typically considered within our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Because we had to, like, it was, adapt to survive, or you don't. So I think that was very much an enabler for me, because I feel like it was this permission that I felt like I needed, even though we don't need that permission, but for some reason that just kind of, it gave me
felt better.
Gave me the guts to go out to do it. And I talk about this quite openly, but I feel like I've now got a bit of a portfolio career, which is funny because as an entrepreneur, you kind of do whatever you like anyway. But I now feel like I'm not just a workplace designer. I am also a business coach, and I'm a strategic facilitator, and I'm going to be an author, and I'm going to do all these things. But I feel like now that's a much more acceptable solution for people, and it's about trial and error, because the thing is, you're not always going to get everything right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a perfect way to finish this, because I'm also looking at the clock, because you have a 10 o'clock appointment. So thank you so much for sharing your journey with me and with us. And I'm sure there'll be a follow-up to this, because I have like a gazillion extra questions.
Happy to do them too.
If people want to connect with you, your LinkedIn profile, I've got that in here. But of course, also there is your melissamarsden.com.au for people to connect with you, to ask their multitude of questions that I'm sure that they have. And because you have a fascinating background and you have an amazing business. And you do good work. That's the best thing. You do good work. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun, and more than happy to do round 2. And please connect with me, find me on LinkedIn, and happy to have a chat about anything that might be supporting you.
Awesome. Well, don't go anywhere. I'm ending the stream, so we go offline and we'll chat a bit more. I'll see you soon.
Thanks. Bye.